every TV show, podcast, YouTube channel, social media platform, news broadcast, and social media influencer all strategically want one thing: your attention. In today's world of endless hurry and distraction, we have difficulty focusing on what's important and spend most of our days seeing and hearing without truly paying attention. Our lives are full of meaning, yet we often miss the giant revelations and ideas and truths that are right in front of us because we weren't looking for them. We must fight to pay attention to the right things, to the things of worth and meaning, and to changing the way we see our day so we can truly see it for the gift it is. So today on this episode, we are going to be talking about living purposefully. Welcome back to another episode of your hope-filled perspective, where it's always our goal to restore hope, renew minds, and empower listeners to live in their God-given identity. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Bengtson, and I think you're in for a treat today, because today we're talking about living purposefully. My guest today is Paul Angone, who's one of the nation's most trusted and sought-after voices to young professionals, people going through change and transitions, and those looking to live a more intentional life. He's the best-selling author of 101 Secrets for Your 20s and 25 Lies That 20-somethings Need to Stop Believing. Paul is a dynamic speaker at universities, corporations, and churches worldwide. He's an organizational consultant with a master's degree in organizational leadership, a keynote speaker, and a millennial influencer who specializes in helping companies attract, retain, develop, and harness the best strings of the millennial and Gen Z generations. He lives outside Denver, Colorado with his wife, Naomi, and their 4 children. Welcome to the program, Paul.
Oh, thanks for having me, Michelle.
I'm so glad you're here, because I think that is exactly true, that too often we are paying attention to the wrong things. And every day, especially now in this digital day and age that we're not going to go backwards from, everything is clamoring for our attention. And I find that sometimes if I am not intentional, I end up wasting a lot of time giving my attention to things that don't really satisfy or fulfill. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you. And that's been my focus for the last couple of years, as I've been researching and writing about this topic, mainly for my own realization, like you were saying, that I really had a problem. I was really struggling with being addicted, really, to distraction. And it was a humbling realization. I don't think most of us really think that way. We don't realize that, but there really is a battle going on for our attention. Everything wants our attention, like you said to start this episode. But most of us don't even realize we're in the fight.
Right.
Or we just willingly open the front door, let everything and anybody come in, really through our devices, our phones, our computers, everything, to say, here it is. Here's my life. Here's my attention. I'm freely giving it to you without much of a whimper. And really what that's doing is that now it's rewiring our brains. It's rewiring our emotions. And we're becoming more and more dependent on distractions, where before we lived annoyed with distractions. We try to limit them. Now we're almost living for the distractions. And that's where I thought, when this is a huge problem, and we got to talk about this, I got to write about this, and I've got to focus people's attention to our lack of awareness about how we're spending our attention these days.
That's right. And the Bible says that we're supposed to guard our eye gates and our ear gates, but we live in a time when information is being bombarded in front of us. And I think for the most part, we're not doing a very good job of guarding what comes in.
You're right. And really all these apps, all these social media platforms, I mean, they're all designed very strategically with thousands of extremely intelligent engineers behind it. Right. And now artificial intelligence, and now all these systems in place to be as strategic as possible at capturing your attention and not letting it go. And also, they don't have any constraints as far as the morality, like you mentioned, or how is this going to affect your emotions? How is this going to make you feel about your self identity, your self worth? They're not asking those questions. They're asking, how can we keep this person on here for the maximum amount of time as possible? So it was really alarming as I would research and I was listening to different engineers who had created different platforms or different technologies who are now worried, who are now coming front and they're being interviewed. And I was listening to an engineer on the BBC doing an interview, and he described what they were purposely creating through these different apps and technologies as behavioral cocaine.
That's right.
And that's very strong language, but I think we have to be realistic and we have to frame it in that way, because that's their one goal, to make this you're chemically wired and hit those same chemical reactors as a drug would. Our iPhone really is the cigarette of these days that we're consistently taking hits from. And so I also find it no little bit of irony that they call technology users. That's what they call. They call Facebook, when they're putting out a report, they're talking about users. And I find that interesting that that's the same term that we would use for drug addicts, users. And really, that's what a lot of us have become, in the sense of how addicted to we are to these platforms without necessarily realizing it.
That's right. It almost sounds to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you have watched the documentary called The Social Dilemma.
Yes, I have.
And it's alarming that they look at us now as the product, our attention. That's what they're after. And every click, every like, they analyze to the nanosecond how long we spend on each post, what we scroll past. It's alarming because my kids' generation doesn't know a world without social media. They don't know a world without these apps. And it's now a fight for their attention, for their morality, for their heart and their mind. Now, I know that you say that living purposefully entails paying attention. And you believe that our whole lives are influenced by what we pay attention to. And I would agree with that as a neuropsychologist. But talk a little bit about, what do you mean and what are the examples maybe from your own life?
Yeah, so in the new book I've been working on, it's called Listen to Your Day, the life-changing practice of paying attention. And really that became my thesis, is that I feel like we're given tons of answers every day. We're given clarity. We're giving life-giving ideas. We're given peace and joy. We're giving all these things, that many of us are crying out for, that we're praying for, that we're asking for God to reveal to us. And I feel like as a faith-filled person, that God is giving me these kind of revelations every day, but most of the time I'm missing it. Most of the time I'm not hearing it. I'm completely distracted. I'm not realizing this treasure trove of amazing revelations, ideas, breathtaking things that are all around me. Instead I am just plastered to looking at everybody else's PR spends that they're putting on their own social media platforms. And I'm addicted to listening to all this, and what I call obsessive comparison disorder. Not to make light of obsessive compulsive disorder, but we're almost, many of us are so compulsive about how much we are obsessively comparing ourselves on social media. And then I also talk about obsessive connection disorder, that we're constantly feeling this need. It's one of those acronyms, the FOMO, fear of missing out. So this generation and younger generations are so afraid of, what am I missing out of? I'm missing out on experiences and choices. So we're constantly just embedded in our devices. And so that we're missing the life that is happening in us, around us, through us. We're missing all these important, rich, meaningful experiences. And we're wasting those away to something that I would ask people all the time, when you go on social media and you spend maybe 20, 30 minutes, an hour, do you come off that experience and think to yourself, that was an amazing use of my time. I feel so much better about my life. I feel energetic. I feel ready to tackle all my problems. No, most of us don't feel that at all. We feel drained. We feel miserable. We feel insecure. And so I think that's really telling us something about, are we spending our time paying attention to the right things. And we have to be intentional about our attention.
We do, because just like you're saying, most of us do not come away from those experiences feeling positive. And in fact, we're seeing more people giving up on life because of that obsessive comparison. You know, the filters that people used, and they take and retake the perfect picture. And we cannot live up to that artificial perfection that's out there. And I think it breeds this mentality that we have to be perfect to be lovable, when the truth is God came and sent his son to die for us because we are imperfect. It also breeds the mentality, I think, that we have to be perfect for God to use us. But God has never used a perfect person other than Jesus, because there are none. But it sets up that artificial mentality. Now, Paul, I know that you've written extensively about both the obsessive comparison disorder and the obsessive connection disorder, but how do we combat that?
I think, first of all, it's just like any addiction. I think it's that realization that, hey, I might be addicted to this. And so even putting something like, the setting on your phone that will tell you how much time you're spending on your phone a week. I know when I did that, I was alarmed. I didn't think I was spending 5, 6, 7 hours a day on my phone. It was alarming to me. So I think that's the first step, is realizing, hey, there might be a problem here. I have to think about this. I have to be aware of this and start paying attention to this. And then also, then that starts the process of, we can start catching ourselves, because the phone, jumping on our phone in particular, has become such a reflex mechanism. We're Pavlov's dogs now, right? So we hear the bell, especially if you have notifications on. And that's just a simple step. I always recommend take all notifications off your phone. Don't get the buzz. Don't get the alert.
Right.
As much as you can, try to leave the notifications off. But also, as we become aware about our usage on the phone, we can start, stop ourselves from the reflex mechanism of, I feel a little awkward right now. I'm standing in a grocery line and it's a long wait and I feel awkward. Or I'm in an airplane and I'm sitting next to somebody. It feels a little uncomfortable. I feel awkward. Or I'm just waiting at a red light and I'm bored. I probably have at least 30 seconds to kill. And as you see, and more, all of our reflex is to pull out our phone instantaneously to escape that feeling of awkwardness, to escape that feeling of uncomfortability. As a culture, I really feel like we've killed these moments of feeling awkward or feeling uncomfortable, and we become escape artists, just constantly escaping. And so I think that becomes some of this process of, okay, how do I start retraining my mind and building habits and building a self-discipline of sorts? We talk about self-discipline in a lot of ways, but I don't see us talking about self-discipline in the context of our attention and being disciplined about catching ourselves, just like we would catch ourselves from, okay, I'm opening the freezer, I'm going for the ice cream, I'm opening the lid. I haven't even thought about this. I'm just doing this. This is a reflex. And then you catch yourself and you think, okay, should I be eating Rocky Road again at 2 p.m. in the afternoon? Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I need to limit this. Same with our phone. When I feel that urge in my pocket, that itch, and I'm starting to pull it out, I can at least catch myself and say, should I be pulling my phone out right now? Why am I doing this? Is it important for me to do this? Or maybe I should just stay in this awkward, uncomfortable situation, because maybe God has something for me here. Some what I call not so chance encounter. We talk about chance encounters. I talk about not so chance encounters, because it's amazing that you're sitting next to this person at the airplane. The odds of this happening are ridiculous, that you guys were there in this moment in time next to each other in this airplane. What are the chances? And yet I'm going to pretend like you don't there, and I might miss a not so chance encounter. So I'd say those are the beginning steps to doing this.
I like that. And I want to switch our attention for just a minute. What are some tips to show others love through the ways we pay attention, that we're intentional about paying attention, like in our conversations with people.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, we need to pay attention to those not so chance encounters. And the Bible says that they will know us by our love. So let's talk about how we can show love by intentionally paying attention to others
Yeah.
in our conversation.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in the book Listen to Your Day, I mean I have numerous chapters about people and about relationships, because that is one of the most important aspects of our day. And I do feel like we've really lost the skill, the art, the ability of paying proper attention to people. And not even just acquaintances or strangers, the people we love the most, our spouse and our children and our coworkers. We've really lost that ability of paying proper attention to them. And really, that is an argument I make, is that all love, if we talk about the love languages, which has become a common phrase that we use from Gary Chapman, acts of service and physical touch and all these things. Really, if you break it down, that it all starts with paying proper attention to somebody.
Mm.
You really can't love effectively. You can't show any effective love language if you haven't paid attention properly to the person that you're with. And so, even simple things like when your spouse or children are talking to you, one is putting down your phone, is stopping doing what you're doing. We're all busy. Maybe you're making something in the kitchen, maybe there's other things going on, but if you hear that voice asking for help, or if you feel like somebody's calling your attention, it's stopping what you're doing, it's turning your body, it's facing that person, pointing your shoulders at them, it's looking them in the eyes, because you're basically giving them all these cues
Yes.
that I'm paying attention to you. You are important.
Right.
And I really feel like the cry of social media is this cry of, see me. Can somebody see
Right.
me? Can somebody hear me? Can somebody please pay attention to me?
Yes.
So I don't think it's a bunch of narcissists taking selfies. I think it's a bunch of hurt, broken people that are crying out and saying, please, somebody pay me attention. I don't care what kind of attention it is, just somebody please pay me attention, because I feel so all alone
Right.
in my house, in my family, with my parents. And so I think even just some simple things like stopping what you're doing, giving somebody eye contact, making sure when somebody's talking to you that you're not constantly checking your phone, you're not constantly checking your watch. Because again, every time you shift your attention to something else, you're giving that person a cue that, this phone, this watch, these distractions are more important than you. So you're telling that person, please stop talking. Like, I don't really care. But if you show them your attention with your eyes, with your body, these simple communication cues, well, gosh, now you're showing them love. And I think that's a base point for our relationships that we're really losing out of these days.
I think you're exactly right. My husband and I were furniture shopping recently, and we were in a show ramp, and we were trying to explain to the salesman who approached us, by the way. She approached us, and we were trying to explain the specific need that we had. And as I was explaining the need, she's looking at her watch. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
you're not paying attention. And then she proceeded to show us something that was the total opposite of what I had just described. And I thought, you don't earn the respect of my business because you couldn't take 10 seconds to listen to me when I was communicating. So how much more powerful would that be in our intimate, familiar relationships with friends and family members? What message are we sending if we're looking at our watch or looking at our phone? But it's interesting that you said, and I would agree with what you said about on social media, it is a constant scream for please, somebody see me. And yet when we're on social media, there are millions of other people on this app, and yet it leaves us feeling empty and unseen. What a perfect example that the things we are giving our attention to will not satisfy. Paul, I appreciate this conversation because it is making me really think about how I can be more intentional, both with my day, but also with others. And I want you to talk a little bit about, you were just talking before the break about the different love languages and how they really all start with giving someone our attention. So talk a little bit more about what the relationship is that you see between building healthy relationships and where we give our focus and
Mm.
attention during our day.
Yeah. Yeah, I could even use one example, something specific of even networking. Going to a networking event. Uh, I always would feel so anxious, and I never liked networking events because I always felt like I had to be the used car salesman, right?
Right?
Who's just dishing out my business card, and you got to work on your elevator pitch. That's what they always work on, your 30-second spiel, to just showcase the amazingness that is you to all these people, so they'll want to buy your product or use your services or whatever. And I just hated that process. And for me, it was really life giving and life changing for me to do a few different things. One, I started reframing networking and I started calling it relationshiping. So I just reframed the word. I instead of networking like machines, let me just build relationships like a human being should. And that helped me. It's just, I'm just going in and building relationships and meeting people and trying to love them through conversation. So then another idea that I started practicing was what I call the first 5 minutes, maybe the first 3 minutes, however long you could do it. But I began recommending for people and practicing myself, when you're meeting somebody for the first time, or if you're even meeting a friend, try to practice the first 5 minutes of only asking them questions for the first 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Don't even worry about your elevator pitch. Don't worry about telling them how amazing you are. Just ask them questions so that they can talk about how amazing they are, or the problems they're going through, or things they're struggling with, giving them that opportunity and space. And right then, again, you're showing them love,
Mhm.
because you're saying, you're really important to me. So I want to ask you good questions because I want to pay attention to you. And I often tell, young adults, young professionals, but anybody going through career changes or trying to network, that you might meet somebody for the first time. You might ask them nothing but good questions. They might talk about themselves the entire time. And you know what? They're going to leave that conversation thinking, I love that person. I want to hire that person. I want to bring them in for an interview. They might not even realize that you haven't even shared much about yourself, but you've just showed them attention. And now they have all these positive feelings for you because now they feel seen, heard, and loved. So those are some of those even simple ways. In something as difficult as for me, I'm not a natural extrovert, so it's difficult for me to go into networking events. But those are ways even introverted people can say, you know what, I just want to build quality relationships, and I'm going to ask people about themselves, and that's actually the most strategic thing you can do.
What I like about that, Paul, is that it's so biblical, because the Bible tells us if you want to be great, you must be a servant first. So
Mm-hmm.
it is having that mindset of, I'm going to put others' needs first. I'm going to show attention before I showcase myself. I'm going to take the time to see and invest in another life. Paul, what does it mean that attention is currency?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we said earlier, that everything is clamoring for your attention, and all their metrics, social media platforms, technologies, authors, podcasters like you and me, we all are really wanting attention. And some people might have good motives for that. Some people might have negative motives for that. But really, we even use currency terms when we're talking about attention, because we say, pay attention.
Right.
So we have that term, that metaphor is already built in to the way we talk about this whole thing. And I do think it's a good way to think about it, in that you are literally paying someone when you are paying attention to them. So is that somebody or something or someone that you want to be giving your money to, your time to, your energy, your emotions? Do you want to be submitting that payment and really and saying, here it is, and I would hope to get something in return. And that's typically when we're making a payment for something, a good or a service, we want something meaningful or beneficial in return. And yet I don't see us thinking through that in the transaction of our attention. We're just willingly spending it. So it's like we're out on the street and we're just throwing $20 bills. just everywhere. The wind's catching them. We're just throwing whoever wants it. Just here. If you can distract me for 10 minutes, you can have a 20. And it almost feels as ridiculous as that when we break it down to our habits and practices and how we are paying our attention, that it really is this currency. That every social media platform is built on that metrics of how much time is each user spending on their platform to show that they're advertisers, that you should invest here because we get people's attention. They're making those payments, and so you should pay us.
Which even includes those ads that now pop up because they're tracking where we're paying attention, where we are spending the currency of our time, our energy, and our money. Now, I know that you say our culture has really lost the art or the skill or the practice of paying attention. So I would be curious, throughout the writing of this book, as you became more aware of where you were spending your attention currency, can you show us just a practical example of how you became more aware of where you were spending that currency and what that looks like now? What changes have
Yeah.
you personally made?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I started realizing really how addicted I was to my phone. Being alarmed at how much time I was giving my phone every day. So as I started becoming more intentional about that, I started, one, just started limiting the amount of time I'm spending on devices, limiting the amount of time I'm giving to social media, trying to bring that 5 hours a day down to 3 hours or 2 hours or 1 hour a day. Really starting to limit the amount of sheer time that I'm spending on my phone and being aware of that and asking myself that question. And then also being intentional about creating spaces throughout my day. And I know we're all very busy. I have 4 children under 11 years old. I'm a stay at home, work at home dad, author, speaker. It's all kind of blended together. So, it's kind of like with 4 kids, it's kind of like having 4 radio stations on constantly in the house, all to a different station, all at different octaves. So it's not like I have this quiet sanctuary at home, but I try to create and carve out intentional spaces where I'm doing something active, and then but I'm also protecting that space by not filling it with a distraction while I do it. So, for example, I've started getting in the habit of going on walks, going on hikes. And so many studies show that if you can get out in nature, if you can go on a walk for 20 minutes, that's going to do more to limit anxiety, limit depression, help with your emotional, mental well-being more than any app could ever do. More synapses are firing when you're going on a walk than any app can replicate. They would only love to replicate how many, synapses they're getting to fire just from a walk outside by a lake. So going on those times, but then choosing not to then put my earbuds in. And as I go on my walk, because now I'm being aware to this, I'm focusing on this, my attention is being drawn to this, is I will count the people, and it typically comes out to about 8 out of 10 people that I pass when I'm hiking. If they're by themselves, 8 out of 10 people will have earbuds in their ear. And it feels like such a paradox to me that we've all gone to great lengths to, again, get to this space where we can be in quiet, where we can exercise, where we can be in nature. And yet still so many of us are choosing, I need that sense of motivation. I need that sense of distraction to distract me from exercising. And so we just constantly filling our ears with noise. And it's like, well, what are we missing out of by doing that?
Okay.
And I find that I get my best ideas on those walks. So even if you go to my Instagram account, all the videos that I do these, reels, it's all on those walks. So I am bringing my phone into the equation, but it's just because I'm so fired up and excited, and I'm thinking through ideas and I'm getting clarity, and so I'm recording videos on it about it because I feel like, man, I'm thinking so much clearer out here by limiting the distractions. My mind is open, and now I'm getting this download of revelations and ideas that I wouldn't have gotten it if I would have brought the distraction back into it. So those are some of the ways that I began to kind of reframe, retrain, build some new habits to protect my attention and really try to choose it and spend it wisely.
I can relate to what you're saying there because some of my most creative times or when I'm in the garden, or even when I'm in the shower and I can't have my phone with me. It takes away all the distraction. And I think that's when God can speak into the areas of lives where he's been wanting to get our attention, but we've been drowning him out with all the busy. Paul, what's just one thing that our listeners could do today to start living more purposefully? Just one simple, anybody could do that.
Sure. Well, I think one, it's realizing, and I think just coming to grips, grasping how much God wants to speak to you, love you, be there with you every moment of the day. And all we have to do is just be open and aware, and be really communing and in relationship with him doing that. And I think that gives us so much hope that God has not abandoned us. God has not left us. God is not silent. He's actually speaking so much. And we will be more attuned to that if we give him our time, if we pay him our attention. And so that fills me with a lot of hope that when I'm going through so many different things throughout the day, so many problems and anxieties and things that are not working out like I hoped or planned that they would, that I can rest and find peace in that my self-worth is not on this teeter-totter of outcomes. It's not on this teeter-totter of, was that a success or was that a failure? Was that a success or was that a failure? Because I've come to realize that, most of the things that I would label a success in the moment, they might not even lead to much in life later on. And then those things that I thought were a complete and utter failure, well, actually, those things were the things that were the most meaningful, that directed me on the path that was the most important for me. So I don't have to have my self-worth on all these outcomes of, does God love me? Does God not love me? Is God there for me? Is God, I can rest in that peace and that comfort that God wants to give me so much peace, comfort, and joy every day. All I have to do is listen, see, and hear,
Yes.
so that my heart won't be calloused and I'll be able to understand how he is actively engaged in my life. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Friends, I really hope that you're hearing this hope-filled perspective that Paul is leaving with us today with regards to living purposefully. I just want you to think about the fact that the God of the universe wants to spend time with you, but he is such a gentleman that he's not going to fight against the distractions that you allow into your life, but he beckons us to come. He beckons us to spend time in his word, to talk to him in prayer. So as you're going about your day, about your week, as you're scheduling things into your planner, you may want to physically schedule time in there with God to ensure that that time doesn't get crowded out. And I promise you, you will be more creative and more productive if you will give a tithe of your attention and time to the God who created you. Paul, thank you for being on the program. I'm so excited about your book, and I love the message that you have, because it's so crucial that we spend whatever time we have living purposefully.
Thank you so much.
Friends, we will put all the information about Paul and his book and his ministry and where you can find him in the show notes at drmichelleb.com. And friends, if something today resonated with you and you were encouraged, or it's got you thinking about how you want to change how you live purposefully, would you consider sharing that with us at the podcast, and consider sharing this episode with a friend who needs to be encouraged as well. Until we meet again next week, this has been your hope-filled perspective, and it's my hope for you that you have a hope-filled week.